At Kaiser Permanente, we're always looking into the future, but we're not using a crystal ball. We're using science and technology to see what's coming for your health. Take something preventable, like heart disease. It's the leading cause of death in this country because only half of us manage our blood pressure correctly, so we made it a focus. The result? More than 83% of Kaiser Permanente members have their blood pressure under control. We may not be able to tell you your fortune, but we'll happily work on improving your future. Kaiser Permanente. Together we thrive. Visit kp.org/thrive.
Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
But you know, they got a storm down there. Okay, it's a big storm, I agree. And it's named Michael, which is, for me, great. Perfect timing. Hurricane Michael here. I think I'm going to rename the Savage Nation Hurricane Michael come January. Not. So here I am, and I'm in radio. I'm not in television. If you're in television, you go out like a moron in a Groton's seafood raincoat. You stand there and let the rain blow you around like a moron. And then you report with a microphone in your hand and say, look, the rain is down and the wind is blowing. I mean, if I did that when I was 5 years old, my mother would have smacked me in the behind and said, moron, get out of the rain. But, you know, there's no lowness. You can't go any lower than TV news. So, okay, it's a big deal, but it's not for radio. That's the entire report on the hurricane. There's nothing else I can say. Please evacuate if you're told to evacuate, okay? So that's simple. I'm going to do a monologue today on Bernie Sanders, who is a direct descendant of Karl Marx and the devil. If Karl Marx had mated with the devil, he would have spawned Bernie Sanders, who was the most dangerous man in modern American history. And I will say why. He's an outright radical communist looking for a worldwide revolution. And the danger here is that he looks like a harmless old seltzer man from New York, or an old bagel man, or a man who came around apartments and sold condoms door to door before they were available in pharmacies. A schmendrick, a schlep with a dirty suit. But there are so many millions of morons out there who don't know history that they're about to repeat it. What Bernie Sanders is doing is calling for a global socialist system to be implemented. Now, I agree that in a free society, even a communist is allowed to make a speech. But Bernie Sanders of 2016 is now dead and buried. He's no longer promoting Democrat socialism. I'll play some sound for you. He's gone naked on it. He's nakedly an outright Bolshevik. If Karl Marx had been recorded, you would hear the words of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders know how he has to go farther left to appease the mobs. He's going to the left of all of the Democrats. And you saw them out in the streets in the Kavanaugh debacle. You saw them out in the streets with Black Lives Matter. You saw them out in the streets with Antifa. These are Bernie's people. They are the violent ones. Behind them are the armies of moronic children and other miscreants of society. They're the ones who want to bring it all down, man. They're the ones that he is trying to get to back him. Now, make no mistake about it. The ideology of Bernie Sanders is the ideology of evil. It starts out with very tempting statements. Food for everyone, health care for everyone, housing for everyone. And you know how it ends up? With piles of human skulls, as you saw in Pol Pot's Cambodia. It ends up with the gulags of Stalin's Russia. It ends up with the forced abortions of China. Karl Marx wrote a story of hell for the modern man, describing a mindless, soulless collective of people striving blindly for the common good of the proletariat. Dante, you ever hear of him? Dante Alighieri told a similar story in his Divine Comedy. He described hell as an efficient and organized bureaucratic state in which every damn soul has an appropriate place and an appropriate punishment. Dante did not know it at the time, but he wrote an apt description for socialism when he said this: the miserable condition afflicts the melancholy of those who live without infamy or praise. This call from Bernie Sanders to, quote, build on our common humanity and do everything that we can to oppose all the forces, whether unaccountable government power or unaccountable corporate power, who try to divide us up and set us against each other. Have you heard this before? Does that sound like the American ideal of being free to use our individual talents to achieve the best that we can for ourselves and in turn providing goods and services for those who can't? Or does it sound like the hell that Dante described? Now, this is not the first time America has flirted with socialism. It's happened before. And later on, I will tell you about Eugene Debs, the outspoken leader of the labor movement, who opposed Woodrow Wilson of the Socialist Party in the 1912 presidential election. And we're going to talk about socialism, communism, and how the street riots are being whipped up by these leaders such as Bernie Sanders and others. In fact, Hillary Clinton today, as you will hear, tells us to no longer be civil. She tells the mobs we no longer and should not have a civil society. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with the police. It leaves us with the men and women of law enforcement. They are the only barrier we have between us and the mobs. And Stop Mass Hysteria, you heard me right, is dedicated to the men and women of law enforcement who are on the front lines protecting the rest of us from the violent, radical, left-wing street criminals whose goal is to tear our society into pieces. That's the dedication to my book. And I have asked those of you who believe in the police and believe in my message and the bigger message to please buy a copy of this book and give it to a local policeman or a local police precinct. Show them that you care. And so my motto is donate a copy to a cop. I realize it's an uphill battle to get some attention in the media today. I know that 7 books came out yesterday. Had my book come out 3 weeks ago, it would have been number 1 on the New York Times list immediately, because there's no more perfect book for the Times than Mass Hysteria. None better. But it didn't come out 3 weeks ago. It didn't come out 2 weeks ago. It didn't come out a week ago. It came out at the worst possible time, which was yesterday, when 7 major books came out in the political arena. So we have an uphill battle to get our message across in a very short window at that. And we will talk about what we have to do to stop the communists from taking over our society, which leads me to the main question of the day. If you are attacked or harassed by leftists, as we see going on in this country, whether it be congressmen, senators in Washington, D.C. restaurants or in hallways, or in Portland, Oregon, where a bunch of Black Lives Matter thugs took over the streets and directed traffic illegally while a cop stood by in Portland on a motorcycle doing nothing, what would you do? What are you allowed to do if you're in a restaurant with your wife, let's say? I'm talking to you, the whites of America, because you're being targeted. Make no mistake about it. This is all aimed at whites in America. It is a race war. It's a class war. And it's being conducted nakedly in this nation. You listen to the rhetoric and don't accuse me of making anything up. Because when they were screaming at the people in the streets of Portland, directing traffic, these thugs, what did they say? Get off the street, whitey. You're an old, weak whitey. Get off the street, whitey. And so they have whipped up the wind, the Nancy Pelosi telling everyone to be a disruptor. And now we are all facing the whirlwind, and I don't mean Hurricane Michael. So I'm going to ask you a simple question. What can you do within the confines of the law if you are sitting in a restaurant and the group of these thugs come up to you and try to chase you out of a restaurant? What are your rights? You know where this is going to go, because I know where this is going to go. First of all, in California, pepper spray is legal. So if you live in California and you are a conservative and you want to talk about your politics over dinner, which is your right in America, and some thug calls some thug by Instagram to come there and harass you, you warn them that you will protect yourself if they do not get out of your face, that you feel threatened. Now, what's going to happen here is that every restaurant in America is going to have to hire security guards. That's where this is going. Because the liability here is in the restaurant, by the way. You have a right, if you are seated in a restaurant, to have a peaceable dinner. Peaceful dinner. You're allowed to sit there and eat. You're a customer. And a restaurant has the right to refuse the service to anyone, by the way. So they have an obligation to protect you. So if the same applies in any place of business. What's her name? Maxine Waters, the hater, has been screaming for months If you see them in a department store, if you see them in a gas station, chase them, harass them. She is committing crimes by doing so. That's not free speech. If you cross state lines to foment a riot, you're violating several federal laws at once. Maxine Waters belongs in prison for what she has been doing. But we have cowards who are afraid to go near her for fear they'll be called a racist. But what are you going to do if you're in a filling station? And let us say one of these thug groups sees you, I don't know, with a MAGA hat in the back of your car or a Stop Mass Hysteria book on your seat, and they come up and start screaming at you. What are you legally allowed to do to protect yourself? Where does the liability of the gas station lie? You can't have a cop on every corner. You can't have a cop in every gas station. You can't have a cop in every restaurant. At the end of the day, you are going to become the Minutemen of America and the Minutewomen of America, and you better be prepared because this is coming to a neighborhood near you. They're being excited and ignited by the Pelosi's, the Feinsteins, the Bernie Sanders, the Maxine Waters. They're encouraging the rabble, the gutter rabble of America to attack the middle class. This is a class war at this time. It is the rabble against the legitimate tax-paying middle class. What are your rights? I'll be right back.
Savage.
All right, I know it's not about the hurricane, but this is Hurricane Michael. I just got the very best news of my current life. I just got this from my publisher minutes ago. Michael Savage, very good news. Stop Mass Hysteria was number 3 overall for both fiction and nonfiction in sales yesterday at Barnes & Noble. Number 3, that's without any promotion. That's without any website linking to the book. The book went to number 3. Now, I got to tell you something. I got to tell you what I went through yesterday. I had one of the lowest days of my contemporary life. I take my show and my publishing career very seriously. So may I share this with you? I try to bicycle every morning before the show, like an hour or two before the show. And I bicycle near the bay. Now, what I'm about to tell you, I'm telling you because I didn't do what I felt like, but a thought came through my mind. I'm a former boater. I've spent a lot of time on the water. I looked out across the bay. I felt like stopping the bicycle and walking into the bay and drowning myself. Now, it was a fleeting moment, and I know I shouldn't admit it to you. But I am an artist. I am a performer. And if you think this is an act, you are mistaken. Everything that I do on this show, I do from the heart. And I felt as though I had failed. I had failed my listeners. I had failed America. I had failed the movement. I had failed my publisher. I read years ago that there was a flurry of maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, of Japanese exchange students who, if they failed to achieve the top of the class when they came over here to go to college, there was a rash of suicides because they felt ashamed that they had failed their family and their ancestry. We thought that was crazy. I'm made of the same exact cloth. The difference is thinking things and doing things. I told you years ago that I learned this many years ago, and it's a very important piece of information, or knowledge rather, wisdom. A crazy person is not defined by what he or she thinks. Crazy is what you do, not what you think. Do you understand what I just said to you? Crazy is what you do, not what you think. Many people would like to go out and riot in the streets, but they don't do it. They're not crazy. The vermin on the left who go out and riot are crazy and violent and belong in prison. That's not free speech, to beat people up in the streets. But that's a separate topic for another day. So now I just get the news that without any help in the media, I had a few shows here, a few shows there, banned and blocked by many others. That's the way it is. They have no obligation to have me on their show. The book is number 3, first day of sales, with 7 books coming out yesterday, some of them buying entire websites. Number 3. Why? Because of you. My audience did it, not me. I didn't go out to the bookstores. You did. And so all I can say is please keep up the momentum. Give that book away to a policeman. Buy him a cup of coffee at the same time, or a policewoman. They are all we have, that thin blue line. That's all we have between us and total social breakdown. Now, I got to tell you then that this is what's been going on. Obama and Eric Holder weakened the police for 8 straight years. They softened them up as in a war. As you know, in a war, you soften up the enemy with an artillery barrage, and then you send in the infantry. Obama and Holder softened up the police around America with one lie after another, with one attack after another, with one cockamamie left-wing rat lawyer from NYU after another, sent out to every police department in America to monitor departments to make sure the police don't constrain these vermin. That's what they did. You think the cops aren't capable of breaking the skulls of those who attack you? As they did in my day, they would have busted their skulls wide open. There wouldn't have been this in America a number of years ago. Nobody would tolerate this in a sane society. 8 years, that rat Obama, that rat and his friend rat Holder weakened the police for 8 straight years and made up lies with their friends in the media. The Jake Tappers, the Wolf Blitzers, made up stories that they were targeting a certain race. All crap. And as a result, the police are intimidated. Now they send in the shock troops, the left-wing vermin from the colleges, to attack you. And the police stand down. So we have a war going on in America. Now enter the next one. Hillary Clinton comes up now and gives a speech. She doesn't want civil society. So again, what's the signal to the vermin? Attack anyone you want, wherever you want. And that's why I dedicated this book. And I promise you, as I stand here now, there's not going to be another one because I don't want to ever do this again. I will not go through this torture ever again. Never. It's the last time. I dedicated the book to the men and women of law enforcement who are on the front lines protecting the rest of us from the violent, radical, left-wing street criminals whose goal is to tear our society into pieces. Support your police. Give your copy away to a cop on the beat. How do you like that? Just give it away. I wish I could do it. If I could give out 10,000 copies directly, I would do it myself. I'd buy them and give them away, but I can't. You have to do it. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Savage.
This country was built on peaceful protests. And those of us who were part of the civil rights movement, who understood the power of protest, taught by Dr. Martin Luther King and others, know that we cannot allow Donald Trump and anybody else to take protest away from us and to deem it to be violent and to try and make us look like a mob.
But you are a mob. You've been encouraging people to stop them in gas stations. Where's that one, Clinton? This is the wrong soundbite. That's her trying to cover up the mob incitement that she's been engaging in for a year straight. Where's the mob incitement one that we want to play to show who Maxine Waters really is? Now, someone heard my interview today on the Laura Ingraham show. Shelley tweeted and said, good interview. I agree it was insane to let the deranged mobs reach the Senate door and allow them to pound on the Senate doors. Michael, I'd really like to know why law enforcement allowed that. What is next, and when will the law crack down on the mobs? That's the question we're all asking. We're talking about the doors leading to the Supreme Court, these huge doors. We're talking about rabble coming to the doors and clawing at it and pounding on it. Where were the Capitol Police? Why did they not do their job? And what are you going to do, moreover, if you're in a restaurant, and let's say you're reading my book or another book, and someone sees it, let's say a left-wing waiter, and they tweet a bunch of mob friends to come in and harass you. That's how it's happening, you know, don't you? It's the server with the ring coming out of his nose. It's the server with the 2 rings in the 2 ears who sees you doing something or hears you doing something like in Nazi Germany and reports it to the Gestapo. And the Gestapo sends in the shock troops. And they come in and start screaming, no peace. What are you going to do? The restaurant has now permitted the mobs to attack you. They have liability. You should not have to defend yourself. I'm not going to leave a restaurant. I am going to defend myself as you must defend yourself. They have declared war. And if society is broken down because of Maxine Waters, Dianne Feinstein, and the rest of them, then it's anarchy and means we all have to defend ourselves, doesn't it?
Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station. You get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
Shut up! You're not welcome in this country anymore. As far get her off my show. I can't listen to this mad woman. If we lived in a sane society, not only would she be censored in the Congress, she'd be arrested for inciting mob violence. I love how the next day she covered it up with Martin Luther King Jr. He would turn over in his grave from a woman like her. She is the opposite of everything he stood for. I saw and I heard Martin Luther King Jr. speak outside the UN when I was a young teacher in New York City, and I was stirred by him. I was moved by him. I'm not moved by her other than towards self-defense. You see, two different things. A lot of people capitalized on Martin Luther King Jr. She was one of them. Jesse Jackson was another one of them. Al Sharpton was another one of them, but they have nothing to do with Martin Luther King Jr. Nothing. Zero. Read Animal Farm if you want to know what I'm talking about. WABC, Chris, go ahead and make your point, please.
Hi, Dr. Savage. I'm an attorney. As to liability for a premises or a restaurant where an employee hypothetically calls rabble-rousers or Antifa to come harass a patron, the employer or the premises has a significant duty to keep its patrons safe and would in fact be subject to extreme liability. I recently in a case had a similar situation where an employee called rabble-rousers to harm a patron at a specific restaurant or location. It wasn't because of that person's political beliefs. Rather, that person, my client, had witnessed a murder in the area, so they were a potential witness. So this had to do with witness tampering, but we were able to obtain a civil judgment over $100,000 for that particular person because the restaurant failed to adequately provide supervision of their employees and failed to provide security. So it was a negligence theory. There was a duty.
Well, I hate to see restaurants go out of business because left-wing mobs harass patrons. So that leads me to the next question. Are you licensed to practice law in New York State?
Yes, and Connecticut.
Oh, okay, fine. Question. What can a citizen legally do to defend him or herself if they're attacked by a mob in a restaurant and they're minding their own business? And a mob starts screaming at them, "Get out of my restaurant. You support Trump." What can they do?
They can stand their ground and physically stay. They can demand that the premises owner, the maitre d', the waiter, give them security. They can demand that their meal be served and that they be free of harm. If they don't provide this sort of protection for their patrons in the interest of just personal safety, you can leave. And if you are pushed and it takes it to the next level and you are physically touched or your wife is physically touched, in New York State, you are able to defend yourself with equal force. So if that person has a bat and you pick up an object, you can go tit for tat. It's not gun versus knife and so forth, but you can protect yourself with equal force. So if somebody shoves you, you can shove them right back. And
well, but wait a minute. If someone shoves you, let's say you're 70 years old, and a 20-year-old thug shoves you. It's not the same shove. The force of the shove is different, isn't it?
That's right. That's right, Dr. Savage. And that's why it would be prudent for that person to leave, seek safety, and call 911 if the restaurant fails to step in themselves. What a restaurant has a duty.
Well, the restaurants are trapped. In the old days, you were imagining you're in an Italian restaurant in Little Italy, and the owner was an Italian guy, would have thrown them in the gutter. He would have pulled the club out from behind the counter and smashed their head and thrown them in the gutter. They never would have allowed that in a restaurant, but those days are long over.
Where the bikers came in Goodfellas and they locked all the doors and beat them up with a bronze tail, either one. That's how it used to be, but it doesn't operate like that anymore. It doesn't operate like that.
So, okay, so we're now powerless to the anarchists, so what are we supposed to do?
Well, you can hire an attorney after the fact to sue the restaurant.
No. I'm talking about at the time the thugs bother you with their screaming and yelling. Can you spray them in the face with pepper spray if you're threatened?
If they are in the imminent zone of danger and you feel that you are immediate apprehending harm of your life or immediate counterpart, yes, you can. You can. But
what if you're a middle-class white couple, I'm going to make it very personal, in your 60s, and a group of rabble come up and scream at you, calling you names, racial epithets like white this, whitey, as they did in Portland. Is that not assault? That's a form of assault, isn't it?
That is a form of assault, and the individual assaulting people will be held liable if they're caught. But that's what doesn't happen. They're not caught.
Well, the cop stood there on his motorcycle. I haven't seen him get fired yet by the mayor, Ted Wheeler, I think it is, of Portland, Oregon. I mean, the cop was on a motorcycle on the same street they were doing this to people, the Black Lives Matter people, calling them every name under the sun and redirecting traffic. You can blame the cop or not blame the cop. You blame the mayor is the issue here. But what's the good of blaming anybody if they attacked the man who was in a car, is 70 years old, and started banging on his car with sticks? What could he do?
He got out for some reason. I know the video you're talking about, old man in a Lexus. He jumped out to look at it, and he actually did the right thing afterwards, got back in the car and left, because by standing there, he would have just took more damage and may have been hurt. So he did the right thing by leaving.
But no one has been arrested by the mayor of the city of Portland, Oregon, an out-of-control hellhole, a garbage can. It used to be one of the most beautiful cities on the West Coast. It has become a filthy garbage can like San Francisco under the liberal totalitarian fascists who run this city. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco. I can name 5 other cities that have deteriorated as a result of ultra-tolerance under the guise of liberalism. And so what is the average law-abiding citizen supposed to do? Hide?
Under federal law. Bring them to federal court. Bring the local municipality and sue the mayor. There are possibilities for individuals aggrieved. There are federal alternatives. However, that goes to show that those states and cities are operating like a neo-confederacy, not abiding by the laws of the United States.
Wow, I like that, neo-confederacy. So in other words, they've already declared a breakaway from the Union, and they're running under their own anarchist flag.
For years, unfortunately. And now it's...
All right, well, lawyer Chris, thanks for your sage recommend. What I hear from you is don't do anything, basically, until you're attacked. Now, I'm not so sure that's the right approach. There are intermediary steps, such as taking out your iPhone and photographing them the way they like to do. The way they've been harassing police now for 20 years, immediately get out your iPhone and start photographing them. The minute they knock your iPhone to the ground or grab it, they've committed a felony. Is that correct? I think he's done.
If they're trying to take it from you in terms of criminal law, once they use physical force to take an item from someone, that becomes robbery as well. That's
all right. Okay, who's going to help you at that point? The restaurant's going to send out the Marines? Who's going to help you?
No,
the guy in who's going to help you? Nobody.
911. You're right, Dr. Savage. We're at a point of no return, and the police are our saviors, and I thank you personally for dedicating your book to the police and law enforcement.
All right. Well, let me send you a copy of Stop Mass Hysteria. Which more lawyers like you understood who the police really are, and the left-wing vermin lawyers that go after the police are actually the equivalent of the retroviruses that attack our own immune system and permit diseases that are nascent or under the surface to proliferate. I'm a student of epidemiology, and I do know how it works. And when our own defense cells, the white cells, are attacked by white cells that have been infected by a certain virus, and then attack the white cells themselves and start killing our immune system, now you understand who left-wing lawyers are and what they do to our police, who are our first line of defense against invaders, by infecting the defense cells themselves, including many police departments have been invaded by them. Obama carefully made certain both our military and our police had been, and I should use the correct word here, had been infected with these retroviruses called ultra-liberals. In law enforcement, it's almost a misnomer. How can you be an ultra-liberal and be in law enforcement? What does that mean? You're going to selectively not enforce the law if you like the politics of those breaking the law? Is that what it means? Yes, that's what it means to Eric Holder. So now we are seeing the whirlwind that was unleashed upon us by the Obama-Holder team, a twofer. We got a twofer out of them. Okay, so now we have a new president. What can he actually do about this? I'll tell you what he's going to do. Mark the day down. I told you that I lived through the Vietnam War protests. I saw the organizations and how they worked. I saw the Chicago 7 trials. I know the whole story of the Abbie Hoffmans and the other vermin. I saw them operate. I saw what they did to this country. And now we have Bernie Sanders and others trying to recreate the very same thing. Bernie Sanders, the communist. Bernie Sanders, the spawn of the devil and Karl Marx himself, in my opinion, trying to stir up a massive communist revolution in this country with millions upon millions of losers and drug-addicted children who do not know history, not even knowing what they are doing, following this Pied Piper. What can the president do about it? He can't do anything about it right now. All we can do is try to spread the truth and try to explain the history and the background of what is going on before it is too late. However, if we cannot stop this from happening, what will happen is the mobs will overreach and overextend themselves. And what will happen, unfortunately, is what happened at Kent State University. Once again, history will repeat itself in a very ugly manner. Because law and order, once it breaks down across the lines. And if the entire society crumbles, that's the end of it for all of us. Our water supplies will go. Our food distribution supplies will go. Our gasoline supplies will go. That's what anarchy breeds. Go and look at Syria during a civil war. And that is what they want. Hillary Clinton said that she wants civil war. Listen to her speech, which I'll play for you in the next hour. So if you all think that you're going to be immune from it because you wear a Bernie T-shirt or you have a Che Guevara poster on your wall, you're wrong. It will hit every last one of you. And as I've said to you before, the guillotine, once it starts falling, is a very thirsty blade. And it will absolutely hit every one of us. I am asking for peace, brother. In plain English, if you actually listen to my words and not my tone, you will hear that I am asking for peace, which is why I wrote Stop Mass Hysteria. And I have to conclude, I know I'm running late, with the last line of this book. The last line of the book is a very important line for all of you left-wing morons to hear. And listen carefully before you snicker your way into the toilet. This is my last lines of the book. In one of his many exquisite plays on words, Benjamin Franklin said of Americans, just before he put his signature on the Declaration of Independence, we must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately. That includes you wise guys from Columbia University.
Savage.
Let me tell you the truth about most home security companies. They're like dealing with another bad cable company, right? You're going to sit around your house, wait for technicians, and then spend hours on the phone saying they didn't even come. And then when you're at your wit's end and you want to get out, sorry, you're in a 3-year contract. You don't need that. No one does. If you're looking to protect your home, go with Simply Safe Home Security. They're the best at what they do. Simply Safe is real. It's comprehensive. Every window, door, and room in your home will be protected. The system is beautifully designed to look good in your home. You'll actually want to use it, and you can install it yourself. So listen to me. Using Simply Safe makes your home safer. It's that simple. They put in backups in case, let's say, you lose power, you lose your internet connection, or someone attacks the system. They have backups in the system. Best of all, you get 24/7 monitoring with police and fire dispatch for just $15 a month. And unlike other home security companies, Simply Safe has no long-term contract. It's the best around-the-clock protection, period. Protect your home today. Please do this now. Get free shipping, free returns. Go to simplysafesavage.com. That's simplysafesavage.com. Once again, simplysafesavage.com. Now we go back to regular programming. In the next hour, I will show you that Bernie Sanders, the spawn of Karl Marx and the devil, is using the rhetoric that was used by every dictatorship that emerged on this planet. They all talked about peace and love and fairness and equality. They talked about spreading the wealth in a more equitable way. But it gets even worse. What Karl Marx Sanders now says is this. He calls us the authoritarian axis. I couldn't believe my eyes. Karl Marx Sanders has now defined we the patriots as the Axis powers. To him and his vermin in the streets, we are the Nazis. We are the imperialists. We need to be taken down. That's what Bernie Sanders is calling for. He calls it a new order. Hitler called it a new world order. Did you know that? Bernie Sanders is the most dangerous man in current American politics. Don't underestimate him.
Savage. Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
It is time for us to stand up and say there is a better way to use our wealth. In closing, let me simply state that in order to effectively combat the forces of global oligarchy and authoritarianism, we need an international movement that mobilizes behind a vision of shared prosperity, security, and dignity for all people, and that addresses the massive global inequality that exists not only in wealth, but in political power. Such a movement must be willing to think creatively and boldly about the world that we would like to see. In other words, think big. What kind of world do you want to see?
Well, I'm kind of happy with the world I'm in, Bernie. You're miserable in it, but you're doing real well. Here's the thing about Karl Marx and Lenin that you should have learned in grade school. Like Bernie Sanders, they came from wealth. They came from comfort. They were members of the middle class. The only difference is he's not a lawyer. Marx was a lawyer. And they went out and preached about inequality in Russia. And they incited the masses to turn against the Russian oligarchs. There are no Russian oligarchs here. Trump is not an oligarch. Trump is the president of the United States. He was not installed. He was elected. That's number one. The Congress are not oligarchs. They were not installed. They were elected. This Seltzer man knows that. This evil Seltzer man knows that. This man, as I say, is the most dangerous politician in American history. Years ago, I told you before that we had a very close call with socialism. Eugene B. Debs. He was an outright socialist. He was a leader of the labor movement. He opposed Woodrow Wilson in 1912. And later he continued to rally against President Wilson and his decision to take America into war. And Eugene B. Debs was jailed under the Espionage Act as a result. Keep that in mind. He was eventually jailed under the Espionage Act, which, if this keeps up, you will see the Espionage Act dusted off by this administration. Now, right now, just like Debs, Bernie the Seltzer man is raising his little voice in defense of the, quote, common man. He was angry because there were rich men then like Amazon now, Bezos, Carnegie, Rockefeller, or the Jeff Bezos of their time. The staggering differential between the wealth of Carnegie and Rockefeller compared to the average working man was greater than it is right now, because the difference is, although the wealth differential between Jeff Bezos today and the average man is greater, the average man is not as suffering as they were under the America of Carnegie and Rockefeller. And so the average working man responded to leaders like the socialist Eugene Debs. They were all angry. They were working in mines and factories and laboring on farms. They didn't even have an 8-hour workday. They had no living wage. And so this went on, and he ran for the presidency, as I said. The socialism thing is nothing new. Socialism in the United States began with utopian communities in the early 19th century, such as the Shakers. Oh, yeah. Labor activists, usually British, German, or Jewish immigrants, founded the Socialist Labor Party in 1877. That's our departure point. Bernie Sanders is the spawn of the Socialist Labor Party of 1877. He is an offshoot of that, in my estimation. And here he is back again, combining the rhetoric of the Socialist Party of that era with the Communist Party USA of the 1960s. And they're using the pinata of white privilege, even though most of them are white, and doing very well indeed. Bernie made over $1 million last year, as do his cohorts at CNN and others in the media. They all complain that America's an inequality, a nation of inequality. And they want to remake the global order now, you see, and they're praising China. In the next soundbite of this very evil, dangerous man, again, he's entitled to his opinion, and he's entitled to speak his opinion until it results in violence, at which point he is committing a crime. Just as, in my opinion, Maxine Waters has already crossed that line by telling the mobs to go out and attack people in gas stations. Oh, she didn't say attack. She said make them unwelcome. Well, they're making people feel unwelcome in the streets of Portland and Washington, D.C., aren't they? That's called a subtle way of saying go out and attack them. And so far, there's been no reaction. We're all sitting here wondering, when in the hell are we going to fight back? When the hell is the tax-paying middle-class person, white, black, Asian, gay, straight, when are we going to fight back? Are we going to sit here like patsies, letting these mobs disrupt us in gas stations and restaurants and supermarkets, in department stores? Or are we going to fight back? And how do we fight back? Well, first we need the knowledge to fight back. That's number one. Number two, we need to know the law. And number three, we need to know how to defend ourselves within the confines of the law, since we're living in a relatively lawless time. The hands of the police have been tied. As I said to you in the last hour, it started with 8 straight years of an artillery barrage from Barack Obama and Eric Holder, who attacked our police mercilessly. 8 straight years. Not only that, but they took every cockamamie left-wing lawyer they could find at NYU and Columbia and sent them out to every police department that they could get their little dirty hands into and put them in as so-called monitors. Here in Oakland, California, there's been a monitor watching every move of every cop. As a result, there's total anarchy. The police are afraid to do anything. Would you blame them? That's exactly what Holder and Obama wanted. They wanted the gangs to run wild in the streets. And so here we sit trying to conduct our lives, go about our business, be left alone, but we can't. They won't leave us alone. In fact, that's part of the dictates of the Communist Party USA. They even scream, as long as some are uncomfortable, you will be uncomfortable. And then they call you a white supremacist if you speak up to them. Things of that nature. So what is your defense? Again, I'm telling you right now, including all of you pompous little liberals here in the San Francisco area, who think that you're going to enjoy your Chez Penises forever. All you left-wing losers in the Bay Area who think you're above it all, especially those of you over there on the Oakland-Berkeley complex, you think you could sit and sneer at everybody and go about your business, that somehow, even though you're worth a fortune through inheritance or through hard work or through luck, that you're going to continue to enjoy yourself, and that the mobs that you have encouraged will only attack your political enemies. You are mistaken. You are mistaken, because the guillotine is a two-edged sword. And as I said to you earlier, and on and on and on, as I prove in Mass Hysteria, which is a book even you liberals must read if you want to educate yourself as to a rational, balanced middle road, because it's a history book. Once the guillotine started to fall during the French Revolution and killed every counter-revolutionary they could find, they chopped the head off every counter-revolutionary they could find. Did the guillotine stop falling? No. It was a thirsty blade. It thirsted for more blood. And so what happened next is what happened in Castro's Cuba. It's what happened in Bolshevik Russia. It's what happened in communist China. Soon the guillotine was dropped on the enemies of the revolution within the revolutionaries, who started to fight with each other for power. It was a pure power struggle. Then they started to kill each other. But again, the blade was still thirsty. Do you understand what happens when a revolution is unleashed on a nation? Look at Syria. How many years has this been going on? That was a revolution. That was a civil war. Has not ended yet, has it? If that's what you want in America, over there in the Chez Panisse hills of the East Bay, that is what you're going to have. And I call for a middle ground. I call for calm. That doesn't mean cowardice. It doesn't mean run from them. It means stand up to them, as I do every day on this radio show. Do you know what chances I take doing this? Do you have any idea what chances I take, both personally and commercially, to speak to you with the educated opinions that I give you, based on history, based on politics, based on fact? Do you have any idea what it takes to do this, to navigate the waters I am in? I hope you do, because now it's up to you. Now it's up to you. I pass the baton to my listeners. And I give you the best I can give you every day on this show. And I offer you a written form of it in Stop Mass Hysteria, America's Insanity from the Salem Witch Trials to the Trump Witch Hunt. And if you think I'm only selling a book, I pity you. If you're sick of hearing about the book, I pity you even further. When you do not see Michael Savage on any television station, on any news show, on any politics show, on any discussion of books, when I am the number one best-selling author in the San Francisco Bay Area and my books are not mentioned, I am the only member of the media here in the San Francisco area who ever broke out nationally to the extent that I have, and yet I am completely ignored in this area because it doesn't meet the protocols of the elders of communism. If you think I'm making this up, I pity you. It means you're an ignorant person. Well, I want to continue when I come back with a little more of the most dangerous man in American history, in the American political world right now, Bernie Sanders. And I think actually before I take the break, Clint, we have to play the soundbite where he declares all those of us who are taxpayers and want law and order members of an authoritarian axis. Listen to what this evil man says next in 03.
While the authoritarian axis is committed to tearing down a post-World War II global order that they see as limiting their access to power and wealth, it is not good enough for us to simply defend that order as it exists. We must look honestly at how that order has failed to deliver on many of its promises and how authoritarians have adeptly exploited those failures in order to build support.
If you actually listen to the man, he's an idiot on top of it all. Everything that the communists have ever promised, Donald Trump has delivered. Never has the society had a greater sense of well-being economically than we do now. Everything that the left promises and cannot deliver has been delivered through naked capitalism. Everything this loser with bad shoes, ugly teeth, and a failed, I can't even say it, but his wife is a woman who's under the gun right now for having defrauded the college that she ran. Oh, yes. You haven't seen that on the Wolf Blitzer brigades, have you? Take a look at Bernie Sanders' wife. Take a look at Bernie Sanders' tax returns for last year. He's doing very well indeed, like the missionaries who came to Hawaii to do good. They did very well indeed. They wound up owning the islands. All five of the founding families of the Big Five wound up almost all the leasehold land in Hawaii because they hoodwinked the native Hawaiians, stole their land. They came to do good, and they did very well indeed. Bernie is coming to do good, and he's doing very well indeed, as are all of the academic thieves who do nothing in their chairs at the colleges, like that little Robert Reich, the mental midget, was out agitating for communism. Even though he's a tenured professor at Berkeley, collecting probably $250,000 a year and God knows what, teaching no classes so far as I can tell, and all he does is agitate students. He is one of thousands of parasites of the academic system.
Savage.
Our job is to build on our common humanity and to do everything that we can to oppose all of the forces, whether unaccountable government power or unaccountable corporate power, who try to divide us up based on the color of our skin, the country we were born in, our religion, our sexual orientation,
Here we go again.
our gender, who try to divide us up in every way possible and to set us each against each other. We know that those forces are working today across national borders. We must do the same and create
across
an
national borders.
International community.
Communism
that stands for social, economic, racial, and religious justice for all.
And where does that exist, Bernie, except in your stupid head? You stupid wooden head, you. You know, Bernie, you're so smart. You're an educated man. You've got the forked tongue of all rhetoricians. You know where this rhetoric comes from, Bernie Sanders, and you know where it leads. And yet it doesn't stop you from fomenting revolution in this country. With millions of stupid children who grew up on drugs and no education whatsoever other than the same hatred you're preaching, you're just liable to achieve what you want. You're liable to wind up on that bullet train leading America. And then what are you going to do with that power, Bernie? Let's take it to its extreme. Let's run out a nightmare scenario. Bernie cancel that one. Bernie Sanders and his hordes are now running America. That's a couple of years from now. It happens. Tell me how they would run America. What would they do? What would their platform consist of? It would be taking away what is yours and giving it to those who never earned it. In other words, the very mobs that are out in the streets will be living in your house. And as in the Bolshevik Revolution, if they were kind enough, they would let you live in the basement. He would take the homeless bums who were crapping in the streets of San Francisco and let them take over your houses. Isn't that equality? Isn't that justice for all? Isn't that what he means? Isn't he blaming you for the bums in the streets? Isn't he saying you're the reason that the bums are in the streets? Again, my friends, arm yourself with information. The insanity of Bernie Sanders' rhetoric has been heard before. It's been heard since the devil himself emerged from the bowels of the universe. Bernie Sanders is a reincarnation of the devil, combined with Karl Marx's rhetoric. And the results are not yet in. You understand what I'm saying to you? Educate yourself and get ready.
Savage.
And now we have a special treat for you. Today I was on the Laura Ingraham radio show where perhaps the brightest woman in the media asked me the most poignant questions about mass hysteria. Let's listen.
Joining us now, one of the great radio broadcasters, frankly, of all time, New York Times bestselling author, #1 New York Times bestselling author of so many books. His newest, Stop Mass Hysteria, America's Insanity from the Salem Witch Trials to the Trump Witch Hunt. Michael Savage joins us now, and he is going to have a new podcast. He's doing all sorts of new things. He was inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame, which is huge. Should have been done a long time ago, but he's one of the greatest storytellers in the United States. Michael, congrats on another New York Times bestseller. How are you?
My old friend, Laura Ingraham, congratulations on your success on television. It's great to see you spreading the word, and you've deserved this for a very long time. But I don't want to waste your audience's time. We've reached a new mass hysteria inflection point, and Laura, I want to read one line. It's this: hatred is in the air. We're living in an age of hate, in which mental pollution is worse than air pollution. The most accessible and comprehensive of all unifying agents. Hatred is spreading like a virus into all too willing hosts. Now, I could stop right there, but you know it unifies knee-jerk liberals, no matter what their other differences may be. And hatred of conservatives, Trump and his voters, is just one of many cases of mass hysteria infecting American society today, but is likely to be the most destructive, and it's getting worse, much worse, even though the Jeff Bezos Post says there is no mob hysteria. What about Antifa taking over the streets of Portland, Oregon, with cops watching on motorcycles down the street? What is anarchy if not that?
Yeah, Michael, when I saw that, it looked like something out of that show Homeland, where like character Carrie's like going through Syria and they're banging on her. They're banging on her windows. It's just scary. It doesn't look like America.
What was the cop doing there on the motorcycle?
Texting, checking eBay. I don't know what he was doing.
Checking his 401k.
Yeah, they're not interested in getting. Well, you got to say it to the police. You know, they're sometimes between a rock and a hard place themselves. They take matters into their own hands, and they're going to be sued.
Well, it's like San Francisco. I went to dinner in North Beach 2 weeks ago, took a break during one course of calamari waiting for the next, went out in the street to stretch, and I saw a bum drop his pants and defecate on a sidewalk in front of the street and then walk on. Nobody said a word. This is a result of the liberalism that has infested our Western cities in particular. Laura, when a society starts to accept a human being, reducing themselves to a level below that of an animal, that is no longer a civil society. It is a society that is totally broken, and it's broken because of a lack of what? Law and order. In plain English, 2 words people are afraid to even say, oh, you're for law and order? What are you, some kind of Nazi? How about some civility? Without law, without order, there is no civility. And yet Hillary Clinton gets up and says, we don't want civility. So she's calling for what? More disorder? More mayhem. It's a bad time, Laura, and you know, knowing your history in America, they're just gearing up for the midterms, and they're going to go wild.
No.
And,
well, I think, like, you're in the belly of the beast in San Francisco, but people are looking over their shoulders everywhere. If you're a prominent person or you're in any way associated with Donald Trump, anyway, they'll set upon you. And they are aiming to intimidate
Why sit there and be afraid of these psychopaths?
I'm not.
I mean, we can defend ourselves.
Bring it.
Isn't pepper spray illegal in your community?
I don't know if I don't know what exactly we could. I think in D.C., I'm not sure. I live in Virginia.
Well,
so
Laura, why should we run away from these pieces of garbage and plain?
No,
Sorry to get
they're all
angry.
a bunch of little babies anyway. They're all mommy and dad. They're all rich kids.
I don't know who they are, but the thing is, they're breaking the law. Let them go to hell, as I see it. I'm not going to run out of a restaurant if someone wants to harass me.
No, it's preposterous. And Michael, when you see that the story that came out, I guess yesterday, today, I can't remember which, but the Arizona detention facility that holds illegal immigrants who've crossed the border,
right,
is overrun now. So many people have now decided, well, they're not separating adults from kids, not doing that because that's like Nazi Germany, can't do that. So they're overrunning the border. Now they're being released in mass releases by the Trump Department of Homeland Security. So,
well, that's just in time for the election.
Right?
Look,
Released.
We know what's going on. The left is winning the social war. The left has won through the media. And who's left on the other side of the Mason-Dixon line? The tax-paying, law-abiding citizens. So it is a war. There's no question about it. Years ago, I wrote a book, Stop the Coming Civil War. Unfortunately, I failed because the left wants a civil war. They thrive on chaos and mayhem. Laura, you know that, right?
Oh, yeah. This gets them all jacked. So that now the new thing in D.C. is when you're near the White House to give the White House a finger. So this is what we're teaching children. To go up to somebody, scream a centimeter from their face, and spit at them, which I say is assault.
Well, of course it is.
Spitting at them, they're yelling at racist. That's inciting violence against an individual. They did that to that Kilmeade the other day in the subway. Like, he could have been killed in there. And then now little kids can put their fingers up at the president. That's where we are. So what do we do as Americans who believe in law and order and civility, even when we disagree with people? And everyone gets a little hot under the collar every now and then. That's fine. But what do we do?
Laura, listen. I still appeal to the middle. Stop Mass Hysteria, which is 305 pages and references, closes with one line. And it's from Benjamin Franklin's words just before he affixed his signature on the Declaration of Independence when he said, "We must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly we shall all hang separately." I think we need to awaken with a slap in the face of reality, meaning logic and reason, where this is going. I studied the French Revolution. After the guillotine got through cutting off the heads of all the counter-revolutionaries, that thirsty blade still wanted blood. And what happened next was the revolutionaries started cutting each other's heads off in a power struggle. The same thing occurred in the Bolshevik Revolution, Pol Pot's revolution, Castro's Cuban revolution. It will occur in America. The left doesn't understand what they're doing, is committing suicide. What you're watching here is not so much a war upon civility, it's a war upon themselves. They are committing suicide. Right now it's reflected on us, those that they think they hate. But actually, it's they themselves that they hate. They are their own enemy.
Michael, what do you think of this? It's separate from the theme of your book, Mass Hysteria, Stop Mass Hysteria, which is on our Facebook page and lauraingram.com. It's a great read. And you sink your teeth into American history in a way which you don't with just the kind of typical, books from pundits who,
right,
just compile a lot of columns together. You actually learn something in this book, which is fantastic. I have to ask you about this Nikki Haley announcement yesterday. What was your sense about this? This was very curious in its timing, was it not?
I'm so glad you asked me because I went on the air yesterday, the day of the launch of the book, and I said, before I talk about my book, here's my take on Nikki Haley's sudden resignation. Now, you may not agree with me. You probably like her. I don't know her.
I don't know. I really don't know her at all.
Well, look, I'm an objective observer.
She didn't like Trump, though. I know that.
Here's what I know. Nikki Haley tried to start a war with Russia. Nikki Haley was a bellicose, militant, non-diplomatic diplomat. She didn't belong in the UN. I don't know I think I know who she's representing. She wanted Trump to launch Tomahawk missiles against Syria. It was 4 or 5 weeks ago. If you recall, she was banging the war drums again. Banging, 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 saying they're about to gas their citizens again. We all know that was another false flag. I went ballistic on the radio. I begged the president, whoever was listening through for him, please don't let him do it. He'll lose his base, because the base of the Trump administration, we don't want foreign wars. We voted for him because he was a nationalist. He said he would end foreign entanglements. So here we have Nikki Haley, the globalist, trying to gin up a war, in my opinion, to get Trump to fire Tomahawks off our carrier, whatever we have out there, destroyers, and B-2 bombers. Why? To provoke Russia. Why? To engage us in yet another war. Why? And I know the why, and I don't want to go to the next step. But Laura, my opinion is she failed to start that war, and because she failed, her controllers pulled her off the stage. I've seen this 1,000 times in politics. I've seen it with Obama. When they're no longer useful, they get rid of them. And I think that whoever it is behind her pulled her off. That's my take on it. She tried to start a war and failed.
They claim that she told him almost 6 months ago that she was going to leave at the end of the year, and that she was out. But the timing of this was curious. Why not do it after the election? Why do it right after this Kavanaugh victory?
Come on. The time I start believing politicians, it hasn't yet arrived. So, look, Kavanaugh, your old friend, boy, did I go to bat for him, even though I think he's a very moderate Republican, which he is. He's a Bush man. Look what they did to a moderate Republican. Can you imagine when Trump really tries to appoint
Coney Barrett? Yeah, Coney Barrett. She gets nominated. That's going to be.
What are they going to say? She threw ice while she was in college?
No, you know what the best, Michael, was? The best, and I can't get enough of watching it, is all those rich kids throwing themselves at the door of the Supreme Court. The door weighs about 400 pounds. I know because I've opened it before when I clerked. The doors weigh about 400 pounds. This little 120-pound trust fund kid tries to bang his way into the door. I'm like, sweetheart, you could not bench press 100 pounds. Okay, you're not going to push a 400-pound door open, you idiot.
Why isn't that considered some form? I mean, I don't know, trying to break into the Supreme Court, isn't that sort of a law?
I don't know why the Capitol Police or the U.S. Marshal Service, they don't have enough people to guard that court, clearly. They want to burn that place down. Well, they're going to burn it down.
Look, Laura, we're in a stage of anarchy, and it's related to this hysteria, and the hysteria is related to an emotional breakdown of these people you're mentioning. And the only salvation here is that we can't buckle on the other side. We cannot give in to hysterical, angry, vicious children, because it's the same as raising them. You have to treat them, not retreat from them. I like that. Good play on words, Michael. I give myself a gold star. We have to treat them, not retreat from them, Laura. These people are mentally deranged. You know it and I know it. There's no basis for this hatred. The economy has not been this good in 50 years. They're all doing well. They're rolling in their trust fund interest on the interest. Everyone's employed who wants to work. We're not in a foreign war. The country's in great shape. So who are they angry at? And why are they angry? Do they even know?
No, they have to. Well, it's their job description. Be angry. This is where they are. They were angry during Obama. Remember, they were all burning down St. Louis and Ferguson and Baltimore, and they're burning it all down. They got to Occupy Wall Street. This is a way of living for them, a way of life. So
well, Laura, I don't want to keep bringing it back to the mental disorder of liberalism, because you know and I know there's a degree of truth in that. What I have to say is very important. I'm really not that extreme in my opinions. I'm actually quite moderate when you think about it. And I think we need more law, more order. I think we need more action against them. But most importantly, I don't understand this. Maybe you could answer this for me. Who is funding all these groups? We hear Soros funds, 1,000 different groups through his
doesn't take a lot. Yeah.
Through his ill-begotten money trading. He's the classic money trader in the temple, who Jesus taught us about. He made his fortune money trading, almost broke the Bank of England, provoked anti-Semitism in Malaysia when he almost broke that currency, and now he's about to break the back of America by funding these radical groups. Why are the 501c3s not pulled on the ACLU, for example? Let's talk with the big head of the snake. The ACLU is a 501c3 nonprofit group. They're not supposed to be partisan or engage in politics. They came out against Kavanaugh. They broke their 501c3 statute. Why doesn't Trump have his IRS pull their nonprofit status?
No, I agree. Michael, we got to have you back. Let's have you back again next week. The book is Stop Mass Hysteria. Love talking to you. Could talk to you for an hour. Maybe we'll talk to you for an hour when you have it next week. America's Insanity, from the Salem witch trials to the Trump witch hunt. Great subtitle. Michael Savage, congratulations. Get out and buy this book. It's a great history lesson and a wake-up call all in one package. Don't go away.
Savage.
Well, I'm sure you've heard it by now about the hackers, who exploited a security vulnerability at Facebook. You heard about it. Potentially exposed the personal info of nearly 50 million accounts. And these attackers stole access tokens. You know what they are. They could use these to take over people's accounts. And access tokens are like digital keys that keep people logged in so they don't need to re-enter their password every time. I don't do that. Now, Facebook says they fixed the vulnerability and informed law enforcement. Really, right? Well, with your personal info from a data breach, criminals can open accounts, file tax returns, and buy property. There are so many threats in today's interconnected world, and it just takes one weak link for the criminals to get into your system. That is why it's a good thing new LifeLock identity theft protection adds the power of Norton Security to help protect against threats to your identity and your devices. We know that no one can stop every cyber threat, prevent all identity theft, or monitor transactions in all businesses. But new LifeLock with Norton Security can see threats you might miss on your own. So please go to LifeLock.com or call 1-800-LifeLock with promo code SAVAGE for an extra 10% off your first year. Plus, you're going to get a $25 Amazon gift card with annual enrollment. You have that down? That's LifeLock.com, promo code SAVAGE, or 1-800-LifeLock, code SAVAGE. Well, here we are coming to the end of hour number 2 on this day of Michael the Hurricane. And my show is certainly not as interesting as the hurricane on television. I understand that. And it is a whopper out there for sure, making landfall and causing devastation. No doubt this will feed all of the warmists the fodder that they have waited for. They'll again blame a hurricane on global warming. So far as I know, there have been hurricanes in the past. Maybe I'm mistaken. I remember hurricanes, but it could be a figment of my imagination. In fact, if I remember correctly, it seems that every September, October, there are hurricanes that hit Florida. I could be mistaken, though. I haven't studied global warmism recently. But no doubt Bernie Sanders, Al Gore will pop up from the ground like the groundhog that he has imitated all these years. Every time there's not a storm, you don't see him, but every time there is you do see him. And so, yes, it's a monster storm, and we're going to have to help all the people down there. I wonder how many communists are going to donate money from their ill-begotten gains. Will Bernie Sanders go out and stop the insanity, stop whipping up the mass hysteria, and tell all the losers of the world to donate some money for the hurricane victims? Will he help the elephants who are being slaughtered in Africa as I do? Will he do anything for anyone except him and his wife? Stay tuned to find out.
Michael Savage, a host like no other.